The sky turned dark, but not because of clouds or night. Something massive blocked the sunlight. A fleet of alien ships that looked nothing like the sleek metal vessels humans had imagined. These were different, organic, alive. Captain Ji-hoon Park stood in the United Earth Defense Command Center, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic display. The screen showed strange ships that seemed to breathe and pulse, their surfaces moving like skin stretched over impossible shades. These weren't machines. They were something else entirely. "Sir," a young analyst named Daewon called out, "the incoming vessels don't match any known design in our database." His fingers flew across the control panel, trying to make sense of the readings. Ji-hoon remained calm. At 42, he had seen enough strange things in his military career to know that panic was the worst possible response. He adjusted his uniform, a simple dark gray outfit with minimal decorations, and studied the incoming fleet. Next to him, Dr. Yuna Kim worked on her own set of monitors. She was the lead scientist of Project Shepherd, a top-secret program that most people thought was just another crazy military experiment. Her hands moved quickly, checking systems that nobody else in the room fully understood. "They're slowing down," Yuna said, her voice steady, "entering Earth's orbital zone in approximately 17 minutes. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what was happening. First contact was real, and it didn't look friendly. Outside the command center's reinforced windows, people in the nearby city of Washington, D.C. had started to notice something was wrong. Traffic stopped. People looked up. Phones came out, capturing the strange shapes blocking out the sun. On the main screen, the alien ships began to change. Parts of their organic hulls started to move, reshape, almost like they were breathing. Then something even more terrifying happened. Large shapes began to detach from the main ships, massive creatures that looked part machine, part living organism. "Biotitans," Yuna whispered. It was a term she had used in her research, but nobody had believed such things could exist. The creatures were huge, easily the size of large buildings. Their bodies seemed to shift and change, with parts that could become weapons, limbs that could reshape themselves in seconds. They looked like nightmares brought to life, a terrible combination of biology and technology that defied human understanding. Ji-hoon pressed a communication button. "All defense units, prepare for potential conflict. This is not a drill." Daewon's voice shook slightly. "Captain, our current weapons systems, they won't be enough against these things." Ji-hoon knew he was right. Traditional missiles, fighter jets, even nuclear weapons would probably do little against these bioorganic monstrosities. But he also knew something the others didn't. Something hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a project that had been years in the making. Project Shepherd wasn't just a wild theory anymore. It was humanity's last hope. "Stay calm," Ji-hoon said to the room. "We're not defenseless." Dr. Yuna Kim looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. She knew what was coming. She knew what they had prepared. The first of the Biotitans began their descent towards Earth, their massive forms casting enormous shadows across continents. Humanity was about to face its first true test from beyond the stars. And nobody, not a single person in that room, had any idea what was about to happen. The first Biotitan touched down in California. Its massive body crushed highways like they were paper, sending cars flying and creating chaos everywhere. People ran in all directions, their screams lost in the thunderous sound of destruction. Dr. Yuna Kim stood beside Captain Ji-hoon Park in the underground command center. Rows of screens showed the destruction happening across the state. The alien creature moved like nothing they had ever seen before, part machine, part living thing, able to change its shape in seconds. "We're losing ground," Daewon called out from his monitoring station. His fingers moved quickly across the control panels, tracking the Biotitan's movements. "Military units are being crushed. They can't stop it." Ji-hoon remained calm. He walked over to a strange device sitting on a special platform. It looked simple, almost too simple. A metal whistle, about the size of a standard military communication device, sat quietly under a protective glass cover. Yuna watched him closely. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice a mix of hope and doubt. The captain didn't answer immediately. He studied the whistle, remembering the years of secret work, the countless experiments, the moments of failure and breakthrough. Project Shepherd had been more than just a military project. It was humanity's most daring attempt to change the rules of warfare. Outside, another Bio-Titan landed. This one hit Los Angeles, its massive body tearing through skyscrapers like they were made of clay. Military jets attacked, their missiles exploding against the creature's shifting surface, but nothing seemed to slow it down. Ji-hoon's hand moved towards the glass cover. "Full systems check," he said quietly to Yuna. She nodded and began typing. Screens filled with complex data, lines of code scrolling faster than most people could read. Each screen showed different aspects of the Project Shepherd system: biological interfaces, mechanical connections, neural networks that bridged human thinking with machine potential. "All systems are green," Yuna reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking just a little. The communication systems crackled with reports of destruction. Military commanders were shouting. Civilian emergency channels were filled with panic. The world was watching as humanity seemed about to fall. Ji-hoon took a deep breath. He lifted the glass cover. The whistle looked ordinary. Metal. Simple. Nothing special to anyone who didn't know its true purpose. "Some might call this desperate," Ji-hoon said quietly. "But desperation is how humans have always solved their biggest problems." He raised the whistle to his lips. The sound that came out was unlike any whistle anyone had ever heard before. It wasn't loud. It wasn't harsh. Instead, it seemed to cut through the air with a precision that felt almost impossible. A pure, clear note that didn't just travel through the air. It seemed to travel through something else entirely. Something deeper. Something that connected to something waiting far beneath the ground. In the monitoring room, everyone went silent. The screens continued to show destruction. But something had changed. A feeling. An energy. A sense that something was about to happen. Ji-hoon lowered the whistle. And then the ground began to shake. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, something started to move. The ground shook. Not like an earthquake. This was different. This was something alive waking up after a very long sleep. In a massive underground chamber, huge metal plates began to shift. Lights flickered on, first dim, then growing brighter. Massive shapes hidden in darkness started to take form. These weren't just machines. They were something more. Project Shepherd had 12 units. 12 guardians that humanity had worked on for decades. Each one was different. Each one was special. The first unit to move was called Guardian Alpha. Its outer shell looked like a mix of metal and something else, something that seemed to breathe and change. Sensors began to light up. Systems that had been waiting for years suddenly came alive. Inside the underground facility, computer screens showed rapid data streams. Numbers and symbols flashed quickly, showing life signs, system checks, and connection levels. Dr. Yuna Kim's complex programming was coming to life. Guardian Alpha's eyes opened. They weren't like human eyes. They were something else. Sensors that could see far beyond normal vision. Heat, movement, energy signatures. The biomechanical system could understand its environment in ways no normal machine could. Its first movement was slow. A massive arm, part metal, part something organic, shifted slightly. The arm could become a weapon. It could become a tool. It could change based on what was needed. In the command center, Ji-hoon watched the screens carefully. "How are the neural links?" he asked Yuna. She checked her monitors. "Stable," she replied. "They're connecting faster than we expected." The other 11 Guardians started to wake up too. Each was unique. Guardian Beta looked more angular, with sharp edges that could reshape into defensive structures. Guardian Gamma had multiple appendages that could work like both arms and complex tools. Outside, the Bio-Titans continued their destruction. They didn't know what was coming. Guardian Alpha systems began to connect with the other units, not through radio or normal communication. Something deeper. A shared consciousness that humans had designed but didn't fully understand. Each Guardian could think. Each could learn. Each could adapt. Yuma noticed something strange on her screens. The Guardians weren't just following programming. They were making their own choices, analyzing the battle situations happening on the surface, planning. They're thinking, she whispered to Jihoon. Really thinking. The ground continued to shake, but now it wasn't from destruction. It was from something being born, something humanity had created but didn't completely control. More systems came online. Weapons, sensors, adaptive biological interfaces that could change faster than any computer. The Guardians weren't just machines waiting to be used. They were alive. In California, where one Bio-Titan had been destroying everything, something new appeared on satellite images. A massive shape was rising from the ground. Metal and something else, moving with a purpose. Guardian Alpha was ready. The first true test was about to begin. Humanity had more than just weapons. They had created something that could think, something that could fight, something that understood what was at stake. The whistle had called them. Now they would answer. Guardian Alpha emerged from the ground like a nightmare made real. Its body was massive, taller than the biggest buildings, with a form that seemed to shift and change with each step. The Bio-Titan in California stopped its destruction and turned to face this new threat. People who were running for their lives suddenly stopped. Military soldiers who had been fighting a losing battle looked up in shock. This was something different. This was humanity's answer. The first moments of contact were almost peaceful. The two massive creatures, one alien, one human-made, just looked at each other. Sensors scanned. Systems analyzed. It was like two intelligent beings sizing each other up. Then everything exploded into action. The Bio-Titan moved first. Its body changed, parts shifting into massive weapon-like appendages. Razor-sharp edges grew from its surface. Organic cannons formed where arms might have been. It was a living weapon designed to destroy. Guardian Alpha didn't just defend. It adapted. Part of its metal organic surface shifted, creating a shield that wasn't just solid. It was alive. The Bio-Titan's first attack, a blast of concentrated energy that had destroyed entire city blocks, simply spread out when it hit Guardian Alpha's adaptive surface. Daewon watched the screens in the command center, his mouth open. It's not just blocking, he said. It's absorbing the energy. Dr. Yuma Kim nodded. That's why we built them this way. Not just to fight, but to learn, to adapt. The battle moved through what was left of Los Angeles. Buildings crumbled. Roads broke apart. But Guardian Alpha moved with a purpose that was more than just destruction. It was protecting, fighting back. The Bio-Titan tried everything. It changed shape multiple times. One moment it was a massive cannon. The next, a creature with multiple sharp limbs. It had conquered worlds before. It had never met anything like this. Guardian Alpha's response was unexpected. Instead of just fighting, it started to copy the Bio-Titan's movements, learn from them, adapt faster than the alien creature could change. The neural link is working, Yuna said quietly to Jihoon. They're learning in real time. Other Guardians were waking up too. Guardian Beta appeared near San Francisco. Guardian Gamma rose from the ground in Nevada. Each was different. Each was powerful. Each was connected. The Bio-Titan realized something was wrong. For the first time, it seemed afraid. Humans watching the battle saw something impossible. The Guardian wasn't just fighting. It was playing with the Bio-Titan, matching its movements, predicting its attacks, turning the alien weapon's own abilities against it. A massive energy blast came from the Bio-Titan. Guardian Alpha didn't just block. It caught the energy, reshaped it. and then sent it back. The explosion was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. When the dust settled, half the city was gone, but the Biotitan was destroyed, completely destroyed. Guardian Alpha stood tall, waiting, ready. The first battle was over, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Ji-hoon looked at Yuna. She was smiling. "We're not defenseless anymore," she said. Ji-hoon watched the screens carefully. The Guardians were doing something nobody had expected. They weren't just fighting. They were thinking. Each Guardian had its own way of dealing with the alien Biotitans. Guardian Alpha had shown how it could learn and adapt. Now the others were doing something even more surprising. Guardian Beta, physician near San Francisco, started to communicate with local military units. Not through radio. Not through normal signals. Something else entirely. The military personnel could suddenly see battle plans. They could understand complex strategies faster than any human brain could process. "They're sharing information," Yuna said, her eyes wide with excitement, "not just between themselves, with our soldiers." In Nevada, Guardian Gamma took a different approach. When another Biotitan tried to attack, it didn't just fight. It started to pull apart the alien creature's biology, studying it, understanding it, breaking down its weaknesses in real time. Daewon called out from his monitoring station. "The Guardians are treating each battle like a science experiment," he said. "They're learning faster than any computer system we've ever created." The alien commanders were confused. Their Biotitans had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had destroyed civilizations that were far more advanced than humans, but they had never met anything like these Guardians. One Biotitan tried to change its shape to become invisible. Guardian Delta, which had emerged in Arizona, simply adjusted its sensors. It could see heat, energy, movement. The alien creature couldn't hide. Another interesting thing happened. The Guardians started to work together in ways no one had planned. They weren't just following programmed instructions. They were making choices, helping each other, protecting each other. A Biotitan that attacked Guardian Epsilon discovered something terrible. The other Guardians would immediately rush to help. They fought as a team, as a family. "They're developing personalities," Yuna whispered to Ji-hoon. "We designed them to think. But this is different." Each Guardian was unique. Guardian Zeta was more defensive. It could create massive protective shields that could cover entire cities. Guardian Eta was more aggressive, able to turn its entire body into a weapon system that could destroy multiple targets at once. The alien fleet in orbit started to panic. Their perfect weapons were being destroyed, not just defeated, completely taken apart. Ji-hoon noticed something else. The Guardians were protecting people, not just fighting. When civilians were in danger, the Guardians would move to help. They would create safe zones. They would rescue people trapped in buildings. "They understand more than just fighting," he said to Yuna. "They understand protection." The battle was changing. What started as an alien invasion was turning into something else. A conversation. A clash of intelligence. The Biotitans had come to destroy. The Guardians had come to protect. And they were very, very good at their job. More Biotitans fell. Cities that seemed doomed were saved. Military units that would have been destroyed were now working perfectly with the Guardians. Humanity was no longer just defending. They were fighting back. And the aliens were beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. In the alien command ship, something was going very wrong. Commander Vrel watched the screens with growing fear. Their Biotitans, weapons that had destroyed countless civilizations, were being taken apart, not just defeated. Completely dismantled. The humans had done something impossible. Each Biotitan that fell sent a signal back to the main ship. But these weren't signals of defeat. They were signals of confusion, of something the aliens had never experienced before. Learning. The Guardians were learning faster than any system the aliens had ever seen. They didn't just fight. They understood. They adapted. They predicted. One by one, the Biotitans were falling. not through brute force, but through intelligence. Guardian Theta had just done something that made no sense to the alien commanders. When a Biotitan tried to attack a small town in Colorado, the Guardian didn't just fight. It studied the attack. It understood the Biotitan's thought process. Then it created a defense that was perfect. "This is impossible," Vrel muttered to his second-in-command. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, Dr. Yuna Kim was watching something amazing happen. The Guardians were developing something that looked like teamwork. No, more than teamwork. Something like family. When one Guardian was in trouble, the others would help. They would share information. They would protect each other. They were more than machines. They were alive. Daewon called out from his monitoring station. "The Biotitans are losing their ability to adapt," he said. "Our Guardians are learning faster than they can change." Ji-hoon watched carefully. This was more than a battle. This was a conversation between two different types of intelligence. The alien Biotitans had been created as weapons. Pure destruction. The Guardians had been created to protect, to understand, to learn. And learning was their greatest weapon. Another Biotitan fell in Texas. Guardian Iota didn't just destroy it. It took it apart, studied its systems, understood how it worked. The Guardian was collecting information that could help protect Earth in the future. In orbit, the alien command ship began to panic. Their perfect weapons were failing. Worse, they were being studied, understood, taken apart piece by piece. The Guardians moved across the United States. Each one was different. Each one was special. Guardian Kappa could create massive energy shields. Guardian Lambda could break down complex biological systems in seconds. But they all had one thing in common. They were protecting something important. People. Cities that would have been destroyed were now safe. Entire populations that would have been wiped out were now being rescued. The Guardians weren't just fighting. They were saving lives. Commander Vrel realized something terrible. They had made a mistake, a huge mistake. Humans were not just another civilization to be conquered. They were something else entirely. The battle was changing, and the aliens were beginning to understand that they might not win. In fact, they were starting to wonder if they would survive at all. Commander Vrel knew they were losing, but he had one last plan. The massive alien command ship began to transform. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was becoming the ultimate Biotitan, a creature larger than anything they had sent to Earth before. This was their secret weapon, their last hope. In the underground command center, Ji-hoon and Yuna watched the screens carefully. The alien ship was changing, growing, becoming something monstrous. "This is different," Yuna said. "This isn't like the other Biotitans." The creature that emerged was huge, bigger than cities. Its body could change in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. Tentacle-like appendages grew and shrank. Weapon systems formed and disappeared in seconds. It was the most advanced Biotitan they had ever created. Guardian Alpha stepped forward. But this time, something was different. The other 11 Guardians began to move, not separately, but together, connected in a way nobody had planned. Their bodies started to change. They weren't just going to fight. They were going to combine. "They're doing something we didn't program," Daewon said, his voice full of shock. The Guardians began to merge. Not like machines connecting. Something more. Their bodies flowed into each other, creating a single massive form. Each Guardian brought its special ability, its unique understanding, its individual intelligence. The result was beyond anything humans had imagined. The new combined Guardian was alive in a way no weapon had ever been alive before. It wasn't just a machine. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something new, something that could think, that could feel, that could protect. Commander Vrel's ultimate Biotitan attacked first. It was like watching a living hurricane. Parts of its body became weapons. Other parts became shields. It could destroy entire cities with a single movement. But the combined Guardian didn't run. It didn't just defend. It fought back. The battle was impossible to understand. Two massive creatures fighting. One made of alien biology, one made of human intelligence and hope. The ground shook. The sky seemed to break. Cities below them disappeared under their massive forms. Yuna watched the neural connection. The Guardians were sharing everything. Every thought, every idea, every moment of the battle. They were working as one perfect system. The alien Bio-Titan tried every trick. It changed shape. It attacked from all sides. It used weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. The combined Guardian adapted to each attack faster than the alien could think. Ji-hoon realized something important. This wasn't just a battle. This was a conversation. Two different types of intelligence trying to understand each other. And humanity's intelligence was winning. Piece by piece, the alien Bio-Titan was taken apart. Not destroyed. Understood. Broken down. Analyzed. When the dust settled, nothing remained of the massive alien ship. The combined Guardians stood tall, protecting the planet. Watching. Waiting. Commander Varel's last plan had failed. Humanity had done more than just defend. They had shown the universe something new. They had created life. Not just machines. Not just weapons. Guardians. The sky was quiet. Where massive battles had raged just hours before, only silence remained. Broken cities. Destroyed landscapes. But something else was different. Something had changed. Ji-hoon walked outside the underground command center. Dust covered everything. But people were already moving. Helping each other. Rebuilding. The Guardians stood like silent watchers. No longer in their combined form. Back to 12 separate units. But something was different about them now. Dr. Yuma Kim came out behind Ji-hoon. She looked tired but smiled. "We did it," she said quietly. Not a single alien ship remained in Earth's orbit. The entire invasion fleet was gone. Destroyed. Broken down. The Bio-Titans that had seemed unstoppable were now nothing more than memory. Military units were reporting in from around the world. Damage was massive. But civilization had survived. More than survived. They had fought back. Daewon approached with a tablet. "Communications are coming in from other countries," he said. "Everyone wants to know how we did it." The Guardians moved slowly. They weren't just machines waiting for orders. They seemed to be checking on the cities, helping with rescue operations, moving debris, protecting people. One Guardian lifted a massive piece of fallen building, allowing rescue workers to save people trapped underneath. Another was using its advanced sensors to find survivors in areas too dangerous for normal search teams. Yuma noticed something interesting. The Guardians were communicating, not just with each other, with people around them. Local rescue teams could suddenly understand complex rescue plans. They could see exactly where to look for survivors. "They're teaching us," Ji-hoon said, watching carefully. The world was changing. These weren't just weapons. They were something more. In orbit, where alien ships had blocked the sun just hours before, only stars remained. The sky looked clean, open, free. Reporters from around the world were trying to understand what had happened. How had humans stopped an invasion that seemed impossible to stop? The answer was simple, but also complicated. The Guardians were more than machines. They were alive. They thought. They learned. They protected. Rescue operations continued. The Guardians worked alongside human teams, not as weapons, as partners. Yuna checked her monitors. The neural links between the Guardians were still strong. They were still sharing information, still learning, still growing. "What do we do now?" Daewon asked. Ji-hoon looked at the Guardians. They weren't just looking at the destruction. They were already planning how to rebuild, how to help. "Now," he said, "we learn." The first Guardian turned and looked directly at Ji-hoon. For a moment, it seemed to smile, not with a mouth, but with something else, something that said it understood more than anyone could imagine. Humanity had created something new, something that would change everything. The invasion was over, but something else was just beginning. 1 month after the invasion, the world was different. The Guardians were no longer just weapons. They were something else, something new. People were beginning to understand that they were more than machines. They were alive. In Washington, D.C., a special meeting was happening. World leaders from every country sat together. The Guardians stood nearby, not as threats, but as protectors. Dr. Yuma Kim presented her research. The story of how humanity had created these incredible beings was more complicated than anyone had imagined. We didn't just make weapons, she explained. We created life. The Guardians had started as a crazy idea, a project that most people thought was impossible. Years of work, countless failures, moments of hope, moments of total despair, and then success. Ji-hoon stood at the back of the room. He remembered the first whistle, the moment everything changed. The Guardians were learning faster than anyone could have predicted. They were helping rebuild cities. They were solving problems that humans couldn't solve. They were protecting people in ways nobody had expected. Guardian Alpha stepped forward. It wasn't just moving. It was communicating. The world leaders could somehow understand its thoughts. Not through words, but through something deeper. We are here to help, the Guardians seemed to say. Not just to fight, but to protect, to learn, to grow. Daewon had been studying the Guardians' neural networks. They're not just thinking, he told Yuna. They're feeling. They understand more than we ever thought possible. Around the world, people were seeing the Guardians differently. They weren't monsters. They weren't just weapons. They were partners. In areas destroyed by the invasion, the Guardians were helping rebuild. They could move massive pieces of buildings. They could find survivors in places no human could reach. They were healing the planet. The alien invasion had changed everything. But not in the way the aliens had planned. They had come to destroy. Instead, they had helped humanity create something amazing. The 12 Guardians were now part of human society. They worked with rescue teams. They helped in scientific research. They protected people. Yuna realized something important. The Guardians were more than just a human achievement. They were a new form of life. We didn't just defend ourselves, she told the world leaders. We created something that goes beyond war, beyond fighting. The Guardians looked at the humans, not as masters, not as creators, but as partners. Ji-hoon thought about the first moment of the invasion, how hopeless everything had seemed, how close humanity had been to total destruction. Now, everything was different. The sky was clear. The Guardians stood tall. Humanity had done more than survive. They had evolved. The whistle that had first called the Guardians would be remembered, not as a sound of war, but as a sound of hope, a sound that said humanity was ready for something new. Something incredible was just beginning.